Welcome to Retro Video Playback and to episode 3 of Tape Talk Tuesday, an episodic video series where I showcase and discuss various movies on VHS. Naturally with, at the time of recording this episode, it being fall and Halloween being just around the corner, this episode features the classic horror slasher movie Halloween from 1978. There's a lot of history surrounding the development, production, and lore of this franchise, but I'll just touch on a few items before getting into the VHS copies of the movie. Forewarning, this video contains minor plot spoilers. From turning a small budget of approximately $300,000 into a $70 million box office take, and from an independent film into one of the most famous horror movies of all time, 1978's Halloween would go on to spawn a franchise that would span well over 40 years, as relevant today in 2024 as ever before. To date, the franchise contains 13 films, with countless unofficial fan films and other movies influenced by the original. Halloween was one of the early movies to use Steadicam, or a version of it, an at the time new technology allowing for handheld camera shots creating smoother, moving shots. Halloween specifically used these shots to represent the killer's point of view, a technique that would go on to be used in countless movies after it, though not always through the use of Steadicam, including famously 2 years later in 1980's Friday the 13th. While Halloween popularized this technique, it would be unfair not to credit 1974's Black Christmas, a movie often cited as inventing this brand of slasher movie and implementing the POV technique 4 years prior to Halloween. Now let's take a look at Halloween on VHS. This VHS copy from 1998 features the original Halloween movie poster art with some amendments. Rather than the tagline, "The Night He Came Home," as often found on the original poster, this VHS cover now includes Jamie Lee Curtis's name below the title, something that was not present on the original considering Jamie Lee was, for all intents and purposes, an unknown actor in 1978, and whose name on the poster would, frankly, do nothing to draw in audiences, which is, of course, the purpose of actors' names being featured on posters and home media covers. The lower left features a quote by film critic Roger Ebert comparing Halloween to the Hitchcock classic Psycho, along with a 4-star rating. I was surprised to see that this rating came from 1979 and wasn't a revised opinion from later on after the movie had established itself with its success. I say this because Roger Ebert was known, along with his review partner Gene Siskel, on several occasions to express disgust for slasher movies. Both film critics independently gave positive reviews of Halloween, which, as many of you may know, significantly influenced countless slasher and horror movies. This includes Friday the 13th, just 1 year after this 4-star review, which both Siskel and Ebert went on to detest, along with the many other slasher movies of the 80s that drew direct influence from Halloween. My assumption is that Ebert wasn't fond of blood and gore, and as is often pointed out about Halloween, it contains no shots of blood. But really, it's a violent movie even without clear gore, so to have such polar opposite opinions of one horror movie and others very similar to it is beyond me. For one reason or another, a positive review from then popular Roger Ebert carried a lot of weight in the 90s, so I suppose I understand its inclusion on the cover art of this VHS. The spines of the sleeve contain the same classic jack-o'-lantern knife art as the front cover, and the same bold white Halloween font. The backside of the sleeve starts off with the statement, "The most successful independent motion picture of all time," followed by the plot summary. To the right of the summary is a shadowy image of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, and in the bottom half is a large, eerie shot of Linda sprawled out on a bed beneath Judith Meyer's headstone, which Michael, for some reason, chose to steal from the graveyard and placed it in this house. It's not entirely clear to me why he chose to do this, maybe to recreate her gravesite but with a new victim? I don't know. To the middle right we find another rating, this time a 4.5-star rating from the Video Movie Guide. Interesting that the higher rating is on the back of the box. This further shows just how influential Roger Ebert was at the time. For those of you who may be unfamiliar, the Video Movie Guide was an annualized book containing thousands of brief movie reviews and star-based ratings, sometimes referred to as capsule reviews. Film critic Leonard Maltin also had an annual book for several decades, which arguably became more popular than the Video Movie Guide, but this particular review that's found on the Halloween VHS comes from the latter, by Mick Martin and Marsha Porter. Taking a look inside this copy of the Video Movie Guide from 1990, we have the 4.5-star review for Halloween, which reads, Director John Carpenter. Cast: Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance, Nancy Loomis, PJ Soles, Charles Cyphers. This is a surprisingly tasteful and enjoyable slasher film. Director John Carpenter puts the accent on suspense and atmosphere rather than blood and guts, as in other films of this kind. The story revolves around the escape of a soulless maniac who returns to the town where he murdered his sister. Rated R, 1978, 93 minutes. Comparing it to other movies in the book, we have Psycho with a 5-star review, Friday the 13th with a 2.5-star review, and A Nightmare on Elm Street with a 4-star review. The tape features printed ink rather than a paper label, which to me is less aesthetically pleasing, feeling more contemporary than retro, which I suppose, to be fair, as far as VHS's history goes, 1998 is later in its history. In the center is Halloween written out in plain text, while the rest of the print is an HGV Video Productions logo and a warning against reproduction of the tape, citing a fine of $1 million and upward of 5 years in prison. Not the most exciting tape I've seen. Now, to another version of Halloween on VHS, Blockbuster Presents. This may feel unnecessary to many of you, but there may be some viewers who don't know Blockbuster, whether you're younger or perhaps aren't from a place that had Blockbusters, but Blockbuster was a massive video store chain that took the scene by storm, eliminating local competition and essentially establishing a monopoly on video rental stores, with some exceptions like competition from Rogers Video in Canada. As Blockbuster grew and established its dominance in the market, it expanded its business practices to include branded products like this VHS. Not entirely rare, but relatively unique, this Blockbuster Presents version of Halloween on VHS from 1995, 3 years earlier than the previous VHS we looked at, features different cover art than the standard edition, though the movie on tape remains the same. The image on the front is a blending of 2 individual stills. The first part features Laurie, though the image appears to be mirrored from the actual still from the movie, and the second, a shadowy Michael Myers lurking in the background. I found this copy at a thrift store for $2, and as I said, it doesn't appear to be uncommon, so perhaps you'll be able to find one in the wild too. But if you're clamoring for your own copy, at the time of making this video, copies are available on eBay for as low as 23 Canadian dollars. It doesn't appear to be a different cut of the movie or contain any additional material, so it's really just a repackaging of the same movie, but for me it definitely makes for a good shelf display piece. Especially as we're currently in a time of blockbuster nostalgia, this iteration of the VHS adds a bit of classic video store feel to a VHS collection. The spines feature the same Halloween logo as the standard edition of the VHS, but with inverse colors, which looks pretty cool when the tapes are placed next to one another. The backside of the Blockbuster Presents VHS provides us with a quick description of what exactly is Blockbuster Presents, a special collection of some of the most enjoyable films ever made. Next, we have John Carpenter's Halloween with the same inverse colors logo found on the front and spines, followed by not a plot summary, but a bit of background information on the movie. Halloween opened in fall of 1978 to scare the wits out of moviegoers and rave reviews out of film critics, who quickly declared it a new horror classic. Not since 1960's Psycho had a fright film made such an impact. The surprise hit of the 1978 Chicago Film Festival, and praised by Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, Halloween went on to become the highest-grossing independent feature ever, despite a budget of only $320,000. Halloween launched the careers of director, co-writer, composer John Carpenter, producer, co-writer Deborah Hill, and star Jamie Lee Curtis. Cinematographer Dean Cundy advanced to bigger monsters in Jurassic Park. I feel like that last one was just kind of tagged on there so Dean didn't feel left out. The backside also features the same shot as the standard VHS of Linda on the bed, along with Michael Myers under a sheet, dressed as a ghost and pretending to be Bob. The bottom features a slew of information including the movie's runtime, the rating, a Blockbuster Video logo, some copyright information, and the barcode. Unlike the other copy, this tape has a paper label that features a Halloween logo, noting that it's in color and the movie's runtime of 91 minutes, but it's primarily covered in non-movie related content, including Blockbuster Presents, a rather large FBI warning, and a Blockbuster Video logo and copyright information. Though both tapes' designs are lackluster, they play great, Halloween looking surprisingly crisp. The sound of the movie is also quite good, the stinger's a good mix of bass and piercing shrillness from the CRT's speakers. Halloween is a must-watch on, you guessed it, Halloween, but it truly is watchable anytime, anywhere. Maybe it's got something to do with the fact that the movie is shot in California in fake fall with imported dead leaves, so the entire movie doesn't really feel like it's all taking place in October. Regardless of when or whether you choose to watch John Carpenter's Halloween, for me, it remains at minimum an annual watch. While it can be viewed in many other formats, including on 4K as of 2021, this movie feels just a little more special on VHS. Like many horror movies, the darker, more eerie mood of a VHS simply amplifies the overall tone of the movie. With that, we find ourselves at the end of our discussion on 1978's Halloween on VHS, and the end of episode 3 of Tape Talk Tuesday. When's the first time you saw Halloween? Was it on VHS? Leave a comment and let me know. Thanks for watching Retro Video Playback.